From the darkest circles of the warp, the Chaos Gods send forth their most brutal and powerful of servants. Using the tides of the nether, the form each of these beasts take could resemble any form of the four Chaos Gods when manifesting in the material realms. When they fight, however, they fight in unison, whether this is battling in the webway or planetfall somewhere. The demons of the End of Empires are always eager to slay souls in service of the Chaos Gods. To fight the End of Empires, the army must be prepared for an onslaught of their every sense, from howling, screeching to fearsome beasts, each manifestation of the demons in this force being more terrifying than the last. The End of Empires has come.
So, a little bit different of an intro today on today's podcast. Today we're looking at an army that I'm actually very, 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 very passionate about, but not as invested in it as I would want to be. Now, there is very simple reason as to why, but I'm going to give you a little background as to this army. Now, you may have already guessed, it's demons this week. We're actually focusing on Demons of the Ruinstorm for Warhammer Horus Heresy. So it's a little bit different than the 40k or Age of Sigmar. This week, we're going to deep dive into it a little bit. We're going to start out where I started out, and that is all the way back in Covent Garden. And yeah, so I actually started the army, and it was actually my first Warhammer 40,000 army before I did Dark Eldar. Now, I actually brought it up a little bit in Strategic Painting a History, the podcast that we did before. Now, I actually started Chaos Demons straight away when I first joined in the the hobby, actually, because this is for Warhammer 40,000. Because I was actually in the middle of a discussion between two of the workers at Covent Garden, two of my friends, and they were saying how there's no particular good guys in 40k, and the fact that everyone believes is a very personal hobby. Like, if you believe what the Emperor's doing, then you're pretty much going to choose a Space Marine, an Imperium army that believes in what the Emperor's doing. Now, I was just being the stick in the mud and sort of playing devil's advocate, and said, well, what's the opposite of that? What's the epitome of evil for this system? And it was a unanimous vote that Demons of the Ruinstorm was that. And I actually started with start collecting boxes. Didn't exist at the time. It was a battalion box, I believe, and I actually got a sort of a plethora of units. Can't remember exactly what. I know I ended up with some plague bearers and some bloodletters and a chariot and all these different bits, and I had that for a while, and I actually stopped doing demons for one very simple sort of arbitrary reason. When I went to pick up the models, or when I was painting the models, I just got absolutely sick to the back teeth of getting stabbed by spikes. Now, I know the demons are very spiky, the chaos iconography is very spiky. I was just fed up of picking up a model and it stabbing me, or painting something and it catch me and scratch me, or it would break a horn or a spike off if I accidentally caught it at the wrong angle. So I actually gave up on demons, and they just got put in a box, and I had this sort of backlog box of just bits of models that were half painted, that weren't painted, that were just built, that were missing arms, missing legs, things like that. And it was only recently that I actually thought, demons are something that I will happily look at a little bit more. And it was because Rhodey, Minion, Barnsey and I did a Tale of Gamers, and we decided we were going to do a Tale of Gamers for the Horus Heresy, and it was just after Malevolence had come out, so I was hot on the heels of doing demons. I actually think I bought the book Malevolence before we agreed that we were doing the Tale of Gamers because I was just so interested in seeing how the demons played. And let me tell you, I was not disappointed. They are, with the Warp Rift markers and the things that you can take and do with them, a very powerful army if used right. Now, that's not to say that they've got their flaws. I think a lot of the Horus Heresy armies have flaws, but the demons, the way I wanted to play, it made sense. It made sense that I would do a demon army with these new rules and try it out and see how I would counter and win games against people that were very familiar with rules and the armies that they'd chosen, whereas these rules had just come out, so it's sort of like I was a bit earlier with getting the familiarity. So I started with sort of getting in blood letters, just building and painting up blood letters and getting them so that I'd got troops that I could use. I already had some of the demon princes like Lords of Change and Kairos Fate Weaver and Scarbrand, Bloodthirster. I already had all these models just because when they came out, they were cool. I was perhaps either working at Tottenham Court Road or in the local store here, and I was just buying them to paint up and work on to show customers and stuff. So they were kicking about the models, so I didn't actually have much to buy for it. I think I just bought extra blood letters so I had more troops and the occasional herald. I also think I got just to add it in and bulk it out kind of thing. So they were an army that I absolutely thrived with painting. Now, I'm going to just talk about the Khornate side of stuff first, so the blood for the blood god and the demons of rage and battle and blood first, and then I'll move on to the other gods afterwards. But I basically wanted to get them all sort of looking good enough to be able to be playing in this Tale of Gamers army, but also to very much a theme. I didn't want to have lots of different coloured armies, models in my army to start off with. Now, that meant that I was getting the Demon Prince from Forge World that comes with the Herald. I was painting him up so that he matched. I also got Samus, since reading, I think it's the Flight of the Eisenstein. I think it was reading that one. Samus first comes in to the Horus Heresy, and I was actually listening to the audiobook of it years ago. And when you hear, I think it's Jonathan Keeble who reads that one. I know he reads the later ones, but when you hear him sort of come really close to the microphone and go, "Samus is coming, Samus is here," it was something that actually really, it added that thing. I'm a drama student by trade. I actually went to university to study drama, and that sort of thing, the fact that it was adding to this immersion really sort of spoke out to me. And I always wanted Samus from reading Flight of the Eisenstein and then hearing sort of this whole like madness that he can bring about his enemies and stuff, and how he can get inside their heads. So Samus was an easy choice there for that one. I also had quite a few Blood Crushers that didn't have riders. They were the Blood Crushers that came with demons on their backs, not the Blood Knights, I think they're called, for Age of Sigmar, but they're the Juggernaut basically by itself. So I painted them up as beasts just to have sort of like the same aesthetic as the rest of the army, because the Chaos Brutes hadn't actually come out yet, and I didn't really fancy the old the hound variant of the Khornate dog looking thing. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. So I got some Blood Crushers to add in. I also, because I had one Bloodthirster and Scarbrand, I also thought, do you know what, I looked at the rules, I saw Commander. I'd known about Commander for years, obviously with his sort of battles with Sanguinius being legendary. I know Angrath, he's called in 40k, the big demon, the Bloodthirster from Forge World, is sort of a good use as Commander. I think even in the artwork of the actual Malevolence book, the profile actually has Angrath as Commander. The artwork actually has that model featured. So to me, it made absolute sense to use to get the Warhammer world, or the Forge World Bloodthirster, Angrath, to use him as commander, and I absolutely loved painting him. Now, I changed his whip because I felt that the whip that it comes with is, a little bit sort of not super detailed and a bit precarious, the fact that it can snap off quite easily. So I actually gave him a Bloodthirster whip that comes in the Bloodthirster set with the flaming Ica, and I actually think it fits it quite well. Now, I sort of had to green stuff it and pin it and make it so it's sturdy, but I don't regret doing it. It just adds that bit of extra uniqueness to a model that I couldn't really make do much converting with the way that he's built. So I've got Commander, I've got a Bloodthirster and a Scarbrand, and I think 40 Bloodletters, along with the Blood Crushers and Heralds and Demon Princes and stuff. So that's pretty much the size of the Khornate stuff. What I'll do now is we'll go on to the Nurgle stuff. So Nurgle, as I mentioned before, I actually had some Plague Bearers already. Those were models that I got, as I say, years ago, Covent Garden. I had got Beast of Chaos when it first came out, the thing with tentacles coming out of the back of its head, and painted one of those up when it came out, just because it's a cool model and it fit really well with sort of the scheme that I was doing at the time for the Plague Bearers. Now, the Plague Bearers I knew were in a box buried somewhere, so I wasn't super rushed to get those out and ready for the army, but I think just, sort of getting the time together with the lockdown, it was like, well, I've got 10 models there that, I'd normally have to go out and buy. They're already here built. They're sort of half painted, so I stripped them down and started again and got those painted up in, I think it was perhaps a week or something at the start of lockdown 1. And then Minion got rid of his Nurgle army, his Death Guard army, and in that he actually had a Great Unclean One. Now, that then reminded me that somewhere in one of the storage lofts that I've put my stuff in, that's scattered all over the country, I had a Glottkin model, which I'd actually converted up from it's got the Skaven, I can't remember what it's called. There's like a Skaven piece which has got a swinging coal block that's basically coals on fire in this cage, and it's swinging in one of the things. I think you could build it up maybe as a screaming bell as well. I don't know, don't quote me on that, I might be wrong, but that's the alternate build. And I'd got this coal block swinging piece, and I'd actually converted up the Glottkin to have it on one of its horns in front of it. So I'd actually done something a bit cool there, and it was up in one of the lofts, and I actually finally managed to get it down when I got this Great Unclean One from Minion, and I realised that actually this Glottkin wasn't finished, and it was missing its riders. I know it's got a sorcerer and then some sort of plague-ridden rider in Age of Sigmar, and that gave me an idea. Now, when I made my Warp Rift markers for the Demons of the Runestorm, I used the Skaven warp tide things, whatever they're called, the Skaven scenery piece, and above that I put the Nokolith crowns. I actually got 3 Nokolith crowns and had them hovering above it with different bits of wood holding them up, or the Warlord Atriot Power Claw that I haven't used the claws from, I used that as well. Just made them chaosified, and on each of the Warp Rift markers I'd actually added a Nurgling as a nice little detail. And I had an idea with this Glottkin that was half done, and it got a couple of holes and some missing pieces like horns and the tongue sticking out of its right arm. And then this left me with sort of this idea that actually I could add bits into this model to make it even more unique. Yes, okay, it's got the swinging lump of coal, and with the power of editing I've actually managed to go away quickly and find out what it's called. It's called the Plague Furnace. So I've actually, yes, okay, it's got the plague furnace bit swinging in front of it to make it unique, but actually me getting these other bits and horns and, you know, tentacly bits from my Chaos Bits box and adding in cool little extras would make this model even more unique. Now, the holes on top of the model, where the normal riders stand, was the bit that gave me the inspiration, which I mentioned the warp rifts, which is why I mentioned the warp rifts. I thought, how about we have this massive lumbering beast from the warp, this huge gargantuan mammoth beast that has come out of the warp rift markers, and why not give it a couple of riders? Why not make it a party boat and have it so that it's got Nurglings riding it? So that meant that I cast out my nets, my searching nets, found as many people as I could that were sparing Nurglings. I already had a few from different kits in the past, and I thought, I'm going to find as many unique Nurglings as I can to have riders on this Glotkin. And I found the one that's being sick. I found, so it's sort of, you know, travel sick. I found the ones that have got their arms around each other, so they're partying. There was one that's sort of holding a maggot in the air. There was one that's like a sorcerer, which he'd got like a hood and a staff. I put him at the front so that it looks like he's, you know, using his psychic powers as hard as he can whilst he's sort of trying to steer this beast that's lumbering below him. I used one from Mortarian's base, which I think he has a thermite looking grenade on the base. I put him on the base so that, you know, he's got a grenade that he can throw, and, you know, just made it a really fun, unique little project to paint up. And it was only a couple of weeks ago, I think I mentioned it in one of my weekly roundup podcasts, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I actually managed to get that finished, and it was such a fun model to work on once I'd converted it. And instead of having on the right arm its tongue coming out, I had swapped it for its sick. I think it sort of like a vomit chucker spray from one of the Age of Sigmar kits, just to give it, you know, a bit more of a uniqueness to the model, because I know I'm not the best converter, but I like having the opportunity that I can convert something or work on something that's a little bit more unique and a bit more interesting than what a standard model is, just to set myself apart from other people. And I actually used the vomit from one of the Magath rider sets that I'd got some spare bits from, and it, as I say, it just made it a little bit more unique, which was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun working on. So yeah, that's pretty much the Nurgle contingent. One Great Unclean one Glotkin, and some Plague Bearers, and the Beast of Nurgle. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Next, we'll talk about the Tzeentch side. The Tzeentch side is very small. It's got Ogroid Thaumaturge, which I got when Silver Tower, I think it was Silver Tower that he was in, I got when Silver Tower came out. And I have two Lord of Change models, one as Kairos and one as a Lord of Change, which I really enjoyed painting up. And it's actually been the most requested model for me to do commissions of. I've had 3 people request that I do that model for a commission for them. I've not actually had chance yet to sort of book them in or get them confirmed, purely because it's a time-consuming thing, that sort of painting style, and I did it in the heat of summer so that I could do it outside and get it to dry perfectly, because I use contrast and it's a lot of wet blending. So yeah, that one was a lot of fun. I painted Kairos and the Lord of Change. I think I painted them sort of in the same, it was either in the same day or one day and then the next day, just so that the wet blending was as close as possible for what I wanted. I did make Kairos a little bit darker, just because I thought he's the named character. Let's make him a bit darker so he's a bit more sort of imposing and a bit, more mysterious. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Tzeentch side of stuff. And then even smaller than that is the Slaanesh side. Now I have the Keeper of Secrets, because he's a cool model. It's one that I was very nervous about. I only painted it recently. You may remember me talking about it in one of the weekly roundups, because I was just ever so nervous about painting up something that's a lot of smooth panels. I've had Eldar, and I know that painting Eldar is something that's actually quite scary. It could be a scary thing for sort of somebody joining the hobby, because it's a lot of flat panels and a lot of sort of smooth features, and I wanted to paint it well, and being able to, you know, get a smooth paint means a lot of time, a lot of like care and attention needs to be paid at all points of painting it. You can't sort of become you can't get distracted or anything when you're painting it. I do also have Silesk, the Vengeful model, the one with the little dancing thing above him with the whip. I painted him up when he first came out, actually, because I liked the model. It looked like it wasn't super difficult to paint, and it would be fairly easy, because it had like these ridged tattoo looking things on its chest and his arms. So I do also have one of him as well. But that's pretty much it for the Slaanesh side. You could tell I'm an Eldar player before I was a Slaanesh player, because, as I say, I've got 2 models pretty much for Slaanesh. I do have some Demonettes somewhere, but they've been built and sprayed, and that's it. I think Croydon herself, she wanted to look at Demonettes because she was sort of looking at the Chaos side of stuff, because she saw how well they played. But we don't know if we'll get round to getting those painted for her or not. Maybe one day we might. But yes, so there we go. Thank you for listening. It's been the longest podcast I've ever recorded. We're at 21 minutes now, so if you made it this far, congratulations. Thank you. I will be dropping another one next week. Next week it's going to be the Obsidian Hunters, so I'll leave you with that. See if you can work out which army it's going to be. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, and take care.